Well, again, I want to wish you a happy Mother's Day. I'll be calling my mother a little later on this afternoon. I think she's 86, if I'm not mistaken. If I am mistaken, she'll let me know, because she probably is watching. We'll watch the YouTube. But very healthy, and my mother was a great inspiration to me. I didn't always know it at the time, but she's a very strong woman, and she was the caretaker of my father for 20 years after he had a stroke. 18 of those years she kept him at home. And so it was a real challenge for her, I know, I can't even imagine what she went through to care for him, but she certainly been a great example in my life, and I think she's been a good example for Beth as well. But it's motherhood is a quality that, or it's and I guess an experience that I don't know that anybody really plans for, just like fatherhood. I always thought I would have 2 kids, even as I was a little kid. I thought I would have 2 children, and that's what we ended up with. And I don't know why I felt that, but I think there's some kind of a cosmic thing that makes you do that to keep the human race going. And so we have kept it going. We did our part there. But I think motherhood is, there are qualities in it that are difficult to describe. Mother's love, as we know, is one of the strongest expressions of love that there is on the human level. But it's important for us to also, as I always say, every holiday, everything that we celebrate has a spiritual side to it. And that spiritual side has to do with everyone. It's not just those of us that are mothers. It's everyone that, every human being has the spiritual principles that are described in the celebration represent something that all of us have, something that all of us are going through. And as Diane pointed out, in Unity, some think that we're very strange by acknowledging a father-mother God rather than just father. And one of the reasons we do that is that the whole Christian tradition came out of a very masculine culture, as we know, and it's to this day the Middle East is very strong masculine influence. And I think there's some change that is occurring and all of that, but the scriptures actually are very masculine oriented, and so God is referred to as He, and Jesus referred to God as Father, not Father, Mother, but and this gets a little bit confusing because we should not apply the concepts of gender to spirit. We do it just because it's part of our language. It's a way to communicate. But we have to be careful with these kinds of things. We've called God Father for forever, so we're ingrained in that tradition. But God is not a man. That's kind of the thing most of us rebel against, is this old man in the sky with a beard and the bad attitude. That's how we tend to view God. It's never a woman that's up there on a rampage, that gets angry at all of us. We never see it that way. When we think of God as a female, the feminine side of God, we think more of a loving, tender, caring, where the guy has the attitude, the man. I don't know what that's all about, but we just have to be careful to stay out of that gender issue, just like we would do with sunlight, as I've talked about last week, or gravity. Is gravity male or female? It's neither. It's both. When we talk about gender in this regard, we're talking about qualities. We're not talking about a sex. We're not talking about a man or a woman. And that's not always an easy thing to decipher when we're praying to a God we prayed to as an old man for a lifetime. But we are moving beyond this, and Jesus always has a good way of helping with this kind of thing because, and it's not always connected. You have to kind of connect the dots yourself. But when he said, I am the vine, and you are the branches, if you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you think of this relationship, you have a vine and then the branch, and we're all seeing this now. We have, Beth has planted a number of grapes out in our backyard, so we have a visual picture of this. And we've all seen, things, vines and branches and so forth. But when you actually think about that, the relationship that the branch has with the vine, it is connected. And if you cut it off, the branch dies. It loses its life force. But that life force, there's no place in that relationship where the life force ends and, say, the branch begins. The life force in the branch is not different from the life force in the vine. So Jesus is pointing out here there's one life force, and it's expressing in many ways. And he says that I am the branch, or I am the vine. But he's not saying me the person, me the man. He's saying the life force, this creative life force, this God force that is at the heart of my being and is at the heart of your being. It's like that is the source, and we draw from that source. And to know that, to draw from that source, we don't think of vines and branches. We think of experience. How can I open myself to that which I am already one with? So as we think of the vine and the branch, that's an intellectual picture that we've drawn. We're trying to figure out the thing intellectually, and it works, but there's no feeling to it. There's no experience. So we have to take it out of the intellectual side, the masculine side, the picture-forming side, and we move into the feminine or the mothering side, that female aspect of ourselves, and that is the intuitive aspect. And our intuition is not an intellectual process. It is a knowing, it is a feeling. It is an opening of ourselves at a level that doesn't always coincide with what we're seeing happen in our life. You may have a big smile on your face for no reason in particular. Somebody says, "What are you so happy about?" You say, "No, nothing, I'm just happy." They'll think you're a little bit strange. But that's what an intuitive happiness would be, derived from no reason to be happy, just that's what the experience of God does. It makes us happy. It makes us know that everything is working out, everything's okay. Whereas the intellect may not see that. So we think of that, the vine and the branch is an intellectual picture of what is intuitively true. That is, that which I am, at the deepest level, is always connected to this vine that is God, this source, this presence, one power. And it's not enough to just think about that, but to sit in the quiet and move into that awareness that I and the Father are one, I and God are one. I and Father, Mother are God, if you want to, are one, if you want to use that kind of terminology. But I myself prefer not to call God Father or Mother, but just to call God God, and know what I mean when I say that. I don't need that. There are many sides to God. There's God is infinite, so there's no end to how we could define God or think of God. But as we think of God, it's all pictures, it's all intellectual perception. And what we want to make this meaningful is an actual experience. And that's where we would think of God as the mothering side, because God is love. That's a feminine aspect. It is feminine but accessible to all beings, all people. The we want that mothering side. We want that inner feeling that you're okay, you're safe. Everything is working in your life. Just be patient, be still. Know that I am your source. Know that I am your power, your upholder. Know that things are working out for the highest good of you and for all concerned. We want that knowledge. We want that understanding. I think that's what we probably are looking for most of the time when we pick up a book and are seeking inspiration. We want the feeling of knowing that everything is okay, everything is working out, and that's the feminine side, the mothering side of God. And if we don't touch that side of ourselves when we sit down to pray, and it's just all an intellectual, I hope God works this out for me kind of thing, then we don't move into that experience that we want, that we're looking for, that all-supporting knowledge that God is with me. So our connection with God is experienced at the feminine or feeling level, rather than the masculine or intellectual level. We experience God intellectually by thinking about God, and most of us do this, and we need to do this. This is what our reading and study is all about. We have thought about God in a specific way for many years. It's a way that's been given to us, been taught to us, and it's all intellectual. And I have said that I think most religions are born out of the intellect. They're born out of the self-image. They're born out of that side that is separate from God. That's why we think of God as a man. We think of God as something that's up in the sky someplace, because we don't know that connection. And so we have traditionally thought that only special people, mystics and prophets and all of the people of the past, had something more than we have in terms of their ability to touch God, to experience God, to know God. And we leave it up to them to have that experience and pass it on to us through their writing. That's why the traditional Christian calls the Bible the Word of God. And it's been pointed out too, that the letter kills. The letter of the law kills that spirit, because we're so wrapped around it with our heads. The intellectual study of this stuff, when we pick up a book and we read it, we're inspired by that, and it's a change of thought, and that's a good thing. But we want more than that. We want the knowing, the inspiration, the oneness, that feeling of oneness. You go on the internet, look at Facebook, everybody's talking about oneness. We all need to be one. We all need to experience oneness. And it's a beautiful concept, but you can't read about it on Facebook and think you got it. You have to be willing to let go of that sense of separation that you have and open yourself to the direct experience of God. And that happens through the intuition. It's the intuitive nature. And you can't learn how to do it. That's the challenge with it. Somebody can intellectually say, okay, sit down, be still, stop thinking, take your mind off all of your problems, and open yourself to God. And so you sit down and you try to stop thinking, and you try to take your mind away from all of the problems that you may have, but then there's this roadblock. Now I'm supposed to experience God. Well, what's that mean? I don't know what that means intellectually. I have the concept. I have the concept that I'm in God, God is in me, and there is oneness. It's a beautiful concept. I love to talk about it. But it's that experience that makes all the difference. There's a difference in thinking about God and having an experience with God, and that's the only difference between a person like Jesus or one of the great prophets or one of the great founders of any religion. Is not in our capacity. It is in the application of the faculties we have, and the most important faculty in terms of our experience with God is the intuition. We have thought of the intuition as that level of where we get hunches about I should turn right instead of left, I should do this or that. I have a feeling that, and it all has to do with what we're doing in our outer world. And that's one level, that's one part of our intuition. But the spiritual side of that is our intuition we have it solely for the experience with God. We are taught by God. We are open at a intuitional level to the presence of God, and that presence then teaches the intellect what it is. It shows us what it is. It shows us how to navigate through life. It's not a concept at all. It is an inner knowing, and the intellect just really grapples with this. It can't figure out how that could possibly be. How could we receive knowledge without studying, without looking at objective material, reading books and so forth? There is a preparation of the mind that is important. It is important to read. It is important to look at the concepts that we hold and be willing to give those up, be willing to let go of those. I was watching a movie this week, Janelle. Do you remember the name of that? I was trying to think of it. Robert De Niro. Yeah, you're just like me. It starts with an M. I know that. It's a guy's last name. But anyway, it's about a man that lost the love of his life, basically. He fell in love with a woman that wasn't his wife. It was prior to his wife, I guess. Never really loved his wife, but he married her and had a son and so forth. But the whole story is about losing basically everything, and his whole life coming down to he was a locksmith. He made keys for people and did, helped them back into their cars when they locked themselves out and so forth. But his life just kind of dwindled down to living in the past. And he wrote letters every day to this woman that broke his heart, that he lost. And just about every day he'd go to the mailbox and the letters were returned to sender, never opened. So he had reams and reams and reams of these letters that were never answered. And a new woman shows up, and she kind of represents a whole new possibility, future and so forth. And his first reaction to her was to shut her down. She was interested in developing a relationship with him, and he didn't want that. He wanted to cling to the past. Someday this may happen. Someday I may get what I want. So he goes through all of this stuff and hits some pretty major brick walls. It's a very well done story. There's not a lot of action to it, but I'm sure most of us can relate to it. We've all clung to the past in some way. But he makes this breakthrough, and he opens his heart. He opens his intuition. He opens himself to new possibilities, to let go of what I think life ought to be, or how it was, or how it could have been, or whatever. It's like, I'm here now. This is a new beginning. This is a new day. This is how God thinks, if God thinks. And I just know this because God is a now experience. Can't hold on to the past, can't project a future, just is full life right now and making that offering right now. We're either shutting ourselves down to that, or we're open to that possibility. That's the intuitive side. That's the mothering side that opens us to new possibility. Whatever was. And we'll never be able to go back and grab that and reconstruct it and whatever. And maybe even if that were possible, maybe if Robert De Niro, no, it's not Robert De Niro, it's Al Pacino, I'm sorry. Sorry, Al. Hope he's not watching this YouTube. Al Pacino. But if that had been the storyline, maybe if he had reconnected with this woman, it wouldn't have been all he thought it should have been or could have been. And that's how we, I think, have to think of ourselves too. God is making all things new all the time. And we're either clinging to it or we're open to that newness, and that's the intuitive side. It just seems like our life maybe is set in a rut and we can't get out of it. So that's the intellect. The intuition is being suppressed. It is asleep at that moment. So that's why we talk about praying and meditating. It's a shift in perception. It's a letting go. Denial is a letting go of what you think ought to be or what might have been. It's letting go of the past. Releasing the regrets, releasing all of the negative energy we're pouring into our life right now, because life doesn't understand that. It doesn't respond to that. Life is life. It's new all the time. And that's what we are. That's the privilege we have. We have that intuitive faculty that is able to tap into that level. So we cannot literally sever ourselves from God, but we can become so distracted with negative appearances that all our attention is turned away from our spiritual source. And that's when life seems like it is just drying up, like it is nothing's working anymore. And that's what I was talking about here. So we're here at this place, and I don't know if it is a success or a failure. But what I do know is that God is fully present. Whatever brought all of us to this point will carry us forth to the next point and to the next. There's no end to it. And so our work is to let go of the appearance, in the movie, to let go of the past, whatever it was, whatever it could have been, whatever it might have been, and know that this moment is an opportunity to start again, to start fresh. All that goes to make up life is here now. And it may seem like it's not, but it's because I'm locked in intellectually to the way things were, not the way things are. It's a what if rather than a what is. It's an attitude that locks me into the past. So we may feel we are withering, spiritually empty, as if God is an abstraction and of little practical value to our situation. This is the intellect operating without the benefit of our intuitive connection. So that's what we have the ability to do, is let all that go and understand it's a life flows. Life is a flow. And we hang on with an intellectual construction. But we are capable of letting go, to say this that I'm looking at is not the real essence of life. This is an appearance. The deeper reality has never gone away. I can never be abandoned by it. This is the mothering side of God. It is that intuitive knowing, that intuitive connection, that all is well, all is working. So the universal impartation of God is simply the absolute peace of knowing all is well. And that's a very important, it's a simple idea, but a very important one. When you are going through your life and you're bound up with fear, bound up with uncertainty, not knowing, you know you've opened your intuitive faculty when you experience peace. Peace about your life, peace about the direction your life is moving. It is an experiential awareness that everything is okay. I am an eternal being. If my life were a movie, this is one frame, this is one section, one scene. But the film keeps playing, keeps rolling. There's a lot more to me, to my experience. This is not an end at all. It's a movement. And so I touch that part of myself, and the result is peace. It's peace that passes all understanding, all intellectual perception, all intellectual understanding. There's no reason I should be peaceful, in other words. But I'm peaceful because I am experiencing the presence of God. and it's always here. The moment we are touched by this knowing, the specifics of what we should do flow a lot easier. And again, that's, do I act? Do I wait? That's always the question. But the answer there is, don't do either one of those. Forget all that. Experience that peace of knowing everything is in divine order. Use your intuitive connection. Open your intuitive portal. That intuitive connection that knows, that allows you to know everything's okay. It is as if you know the hand of God has led you to this place, and the hand of God will continue to lead you still. Maybe you've learned all the lessons you need to learn in this particular phase of your life. Maybe you're done. Maybe you're graduating. Graduations are always exciting. They're always scary and they're always exciting. When I was ordained, we had a graduation ceremony, and I was about to be launched from student to minister, and that was kind of a frightening experience. Not knowing. It's easier to cling to something you're familiar with. It's easier to go to a classroom than a church where there's actual real people, real congregants. But graduations are exciting. I couldn't wait at the same time that I had the fear. There was a mix. But that's what life always does, and it is still with us. Though we go through changes, it's still with us. And the grounding ability we have is that intuitive knowing, that intuitive connection. So abide consciously in the vine that is your source, God, your source. Find that place in yourself where you know you are the branch and you're now bearing the desired fruit of success in your life. But let your life be something different than you think or expect. Be willing for it to take a different direction if necessary. All right? Thank you for coming out, and again, have a wonderful Mother's Day, those of you that are mothers. And if your mother's still here, be sure to tell her how much you appreciate her. All right?